Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is the 8th video in the series Thesis Writing with Microsoft Word. This is Mohammed Bella. You are welcome. In this video, we're going to look at working with tables like we did in the previous video. By the way, if you have not watched the previous video, you can find the link in the description below. Specifically, we are going to look at how we can adjust column widths and row heights in our tables and how we include repeating header rows. Let's jump directly into our Microsoft Word document so that we can see how we do that. We'll go to the taskbar and start our Microsoft Word here. If we want to work with tables, we go to the ribbon, click on the Insert tab. There is a tables group there, and then we have a handle for inserting the table. We can click on it. Once we have that button clicked, we have several ways to insert a table. We can use the grid, for example. I have picked the grid. Now we have 4 columns and maybe 5 rows. So we have our table in place. Usually when you insert a new table in Microsoft Word, the columns have uniform widths and the rows have uniform height, as we can see here. So suppose you are given something like this table and you are asked to reproduce it, then you will notice that one of the columns is much wider than all the other columns. Like the project title column is much wider than every other column that we have in the table, followed by the student name column, and then the status and whatever. So if we want to actually adjust column widths or row heights, it's very simple. Suppose this is the first row which I have highlighted, and I want to reduce the width of this column. All I need to do is to grab the border adjacent to that particular column, actually the vertical border, this one. I hover over it. Once my mouse turns into a double-headed arrow, I press the left button and then I can drag the border left or right. As you can see, if I drag it to the left, I'm narrowing this column and then I'm widening this column. If I drag it to the right, I am narrowing this column and I am widening this column. Equally, if I want to do that using a different approach, we can go to the table layout there. By the way, the 2 tabs you are seeing at the top here, table design and table layout, are only available when you have a table and the table is active. For example, if I click outside the table anywhere, you see that these tabs will vanish because they are associated with the table anytime you are working with the table. So if I click anywhere in the table, you'll see that the 2 tabs will appear. And if I want to work with the table layout, for example, I can click in the table layout, and here I can do a lot of things that we saw in the previous video using the buttons in this particular tab group. So, for example, if I want to increase you can see that my mouse pointer is in this. If I highlight this particular cell, it means that my mouse is now actively in this cell, column 1, row 1, that is here. So if I want to increase the size of this, or I want to decrease the width of this column, for example, sorry, I'm talking about the columns here. If I now say that if I want to decrease this column from, as you can see, the column is now 4.02 centimeters. So if I want to reduce the column, I want to reduce the width of the column, you can type something like 2 centimeters. If I press enter, you'll see that the columns will now come down to something narrower. If I want to make it 5, for example, I can just type directly here and make it 5 centimeters, so that you can see that I have increased the column. If I make it 10, we can have something like 10 centimeters. You can see it has widened. So depending on what you want to do, you can use the numbers specifically, or you can, when you undo it, you can use the borders by grabbing the border of the column and then adjusting it to the left or to the right, depending on how you want it to appear. The same thing with the rows. If you want to increase the height of the highlighted row here, for example, you can simply hover over the horizontal border, the bottommost border, until you see a double-headed arrow, and then you press your left button, you drag the mouse downwards, and you can see you are increasing the height of this particular row. And if you grab the same border and you drag it upwards, you are reducing the height of the row. So you can always increase the height of the row in whatever way you want. You can now increase the height of this row here, or reduce it to the size you want. So that is how you increase column widths and row heights, or you decrease them. In other words, how you adjust the width of the columns and the height of the rows. And suppose now that we have this column has been reduced to this size, and this column has been reduced to this size, and then one of these columns is much wider. You can see that we have varying widths of the columns. So, but we can always bring it back to uniform sizes. If we want the columns to be uniform in width, we can always click on the handle of the table, and then we click on the table layout, and then we can come to distribute columns. When you click on distribute columns, you are now going to bring back the columns to the same uniform width. The same thing with the rows. The height of this column is much wider than all the rest because we have adjusted them. And then if we want to make the row heights uniform, you can highlight all the rows, or you can just click on the handle of the table and then go to distribute rows, and when you click it, you see that the heights of the rows are now uniform. So that is how to manipulate the sizes of the columns or rows you have in your table. So coming to the issue of repeating header rows, this is what we mean by header row. This one is the header row, the topmost row here. As you can see, let me highlight it. I hope I highlighted correctly. What is happening to this? Okay, this is the row. I have highlighted the header row here because it is the row that has the title for the columns in the table. Because of that, row is referred to as the header row. The problem with a header row is that if you do not know how to repeat it in pages that carry your table, suppose this table as we can see is holding only 4 students, but it's possible that the table will now, the volume of the number of students will increase as the academic year increases, so that you are going to see that the table will, I'm just pressing the my tab key so that I want the table to split into the next page. For example, you can see that the table now has extended into the next page, right? Now, but if you have this, if I go and then maybe copy these names of students, and then suppose that now that we have 4 students, but it's possible that we can have 100 students, and so if we have 100 students, some of the students will now be on this table, as we are seeing in the next page here. You can see, so you can see that this particular student is the first student in this page, but we don't know what this column is all about and the next column. So, but if we are looking at the top of the table, you will notice that, oh, the first column is about ID, the student's ID, the next one is the student name, and so on and so forth. So suppose somebody is looking at the second page, he would want to know what is the title of this first column, what is the title of the second column, and so that is what repeating header rows is all about. So what you do is that if you want it to appear in every page that the table extends into, you just highlight the header row that we did here. Once you have highlighted the header row, you go to the table layout here, click it, you'll see that to the under the data group you have repeat header rows there. If you click on repeat header rows, you can be sure that anytime your table extends into a new page, it also carries the header row, so that if we deliberately press our tab key continuously until we find that we are in the third page, for example, we are going to see that the header row will also be reflected in page 3 of our document. So you can see, you can see that it has now reflected in that particular page. So that is how we include header rows into new pages that carry our table. I hope this video has been helpful, and if so, thank you for watching. We hope to meet in the next video.